So now, whilst the votes are being counted by our independent adjudicator, I'm delighted to say that we have two short addresses, two speakers today for your attention, and we will return to the voting and the presentation awards after the two talks. First up, I'm very pleased to introduce a young gentleman named Mike Scott. Mike only found out he was talking on Friday. So, quite a daunting task to talk to so many people in the industry. He's absolutely buzzing to do it, he tells me, and he's going to do a fantastic job. A bit about Mike. Mike is an offshore operative, let's use that term. He has spent a number of years offshore. He recently worked on the Culzean Total project, which was very successful, and he's now doing some ad hoc work in the industry. So enough said, please welcome Aberdeen's Mike Scotland to the stage, and he will give a short talk. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
They're all yours, Mike.
Cheers, thank you. Yeah, as Steve kindly said there, my name's Mike Scotland. And yeah, he just kind of briefly went over there. I was working on the Culzean hookup for Billfinger as a deck operative. And during my time on there, I was also an elected safety rep. So just to give you all a very summary of my offshore career, I started in the downturn during February 2014 as a green hand roustabout, which is like an entry level into the drilling side of things offshore. Since then, I've been involved in multiple operations all over the North Sea. I've been on many different rigs, rigs doing drilling with high temperature, high pressure wells. I've been involved with rig moves to different locations. And as Steve kindly said there, my recent project has been on the Culzean project in the hookup for Total. With me being offshore for 5.5 years, I've been lucky enough to work on all these different rigs, which has given me a depth experience that somebody which may have 20 years offshore but on one rig probably fails to have. During the Culzean platform hookup, I managed to gain the position as one of Billfinger's safety reps. During my time on the rigs, I was unable to fulfill this role because I was normally an agency worker. So I just wasn't allowed to fulfill that role, unfortunately for myself. So to finally become a safety rep, I was honoured, and I wanted to try and maximise the role as much as I possibly could. From my previous knowledge and experience of safety reps from the drilling side of offshore, I'd never really seen anyone make an impact or speak up on behalf of their constituents. And I never really understood why this was. The things that they were coming to, it was getting pushed back because of prices, something would maybe cost too much. Or the frustrating part was that, that it just wasn't an interest. And then even sometimes, nothing would get said because they're plainly too intimidated to raise a safety concern. Okay? So I didn't really understand that, and I wanted to fulfill the role as much as I could and take things personally. What can I personally do to help the deck crews and the drill crews and the operators on the rigs I'm working on? What can I do? After attending a safety rep course and returning offshore, the safety reps and I from the Culzean all got a red hard hat put on our heads. That's what we get given. So when we were out in the park on the Culzean, there was hundreds of people working at a time. The guys with the red hard hats, they stand out just a little bit more. Okay, so you go to them guys if you've got a safety concern or you have something that you don't feel comfortable going up the chain of command, well, come to us. We're there to be a voice for the people, and we want to help. And we'll discuss it as a team, and we'll get the final outcome. So that was great. So we all got our red hard hats, and then weekly we would attend a safety reps meeting. And at the safety reps meeting, we would have an HSE established person there, and we would speak to the OIM as well. So that was, as a safety rep, that was part of our role, is to have these meetings, have these discussions. And we would discuss multiple things, accidents and incidents which had happened on the rig, across the different rigs and within the industry themselves. And we would also talk about different concerns raised from our constituents that have been brought to us that we had to then project as a team and try and resolve these incidents and accidents from reoccurring and try and find maybe a different method to make it relatable to the offshore workers. During the course of the project, there were multiple changes. There was new people coming and going across the different companies and trades. There was changes in the work scopes, changes in the weather, obviously, North Sea, okay? And there was also specific changes due to the management of change because of certain incidents that had been happening. There had to be a different change in management. So, while some of the changes were questionable, they were deemed safer and had to be adhered to. Knowing your job, pardon me, I will reverse that a wee bit. While some changes were questionable, we had to meet the demands and adhere to them, regardless if we found it safer or not. We had to adhere to them. So I would just like everyone in the room to have a quick think if, just imagine you go to your workplace, you know your job, you know what you're doing, you know it inside out, you're comfortable. And just before you start your shift, somebody comes in and says, right, what you done yesterday, right, it's all changing now. Here's a load of different things, but just adhere to it. You're expected to know it, and you're expected to just do it straight away. And that's kind of what it's like from being offshore, from our perspective, most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. So, personally, whilst being a safety rep, I'm very much a why man. And if there's a change, I like to know why the changes are being made and why it is deemed safer, as I couldn't explain changes to my constituents and encourage a safe working culture if I couldn't understand the changes myself. One of the changes I experienced personally from different rigs I'd been on and coming onto the Culzean platform was the wearing of earplugs was mandatory. You had to wear them whilst on the platform during working hours. It was part of a procedure, and it was also one of Total's golden rule number 4 covering personal protective equipment. I'd never had to wear earplugs before unless it was for a specific task, part of a JSA or a work permit that you had to wear it for the task you were doing. That was all. I'd never had to wear them normally during working duties on a rig. However, like I said, on the Culzean, it was part of a PPE checklist that had been very well communicated around the rig. It was mentioned as part of the welcome brief on board, and in summary, everyone knew they had to wear the earplugs. I ask everyone in the room just now, do you all think everyone wore the earplugs? No, okay, cool. No's the correct answer. That's the correct answer. Everyone knew to wear the earplugs, but not everyone wore the earplugs, okay? So on the back end of one of the safety rep meetings that we had, it frustrated me that so many people could not grasp the concept of wearing earplugs, and the other safety reps had agreed the exact same. However, we were unsure on what to do to create a change and the best way to do it. So after shift that day, I went back to my room and I thought long and hard, and I thought, if there has to be a change and it's not working, we all need to try and make a change to what we're doing. How can we implement a change? So the next day, during our pre-shift meeting, in front of an audience of about 150 offshore workers, I acted out in a scenario, in mute, in silence. After the acted out scenario, I then took out a pair of earplugs, placed them in my ears, and reenacted the same scenario again, but this time in volume, okay? The scenario was I was teaching my baby son his first words, Dada, of course. And then I phoned my wife and spoke to her on the phone. I love you loads, I miss you, I can't wait to come home. And then put the phone down, and then I sang a lullaby to my son. I sang in front of 150 offshore workers. Can you imagine how I felt? I'm not a good singer, and I won't put that on you today. And although there was some chuckles in the room, there was also a depth of silence that it just hit. People understood what I was trying to say. After I finished the scenario, I held up the earplugs, the rhubarb-looking earplugs that you normally get offshore. I held them up and asked everyone, does everyone know what these are? Yes, yeah, of course we know what we are. Do you know why you have to wear them? Oh yeah, of course I know why we have to wear them. So why are we not wearing them then? Why are we not wearing them? You know you have to wear them. You know you need to wear them. You know it's for you guys, so why are we not wearing them? And then I explained that by not wearing them, you know, you can lose your hearing, and when it's gone, it's gone. It doesn't come back. It's gone. Okay? And by not wearing the earplugs, they're taking that responsibility, and when they go home to their families and they try and explain that I can't hear anymore, that's going to be their fault. That's going to be their fault because they chose not to use the earplugs. So, after the presentation, I received good feedback, and whilst I was out on the platform and walking about the deck for the duration of that trip and the duration of the project, I had seen a drastic amount of numbers dropped from people not wearing the earplugs. Okay, it's not because I go around the rig singing, okay, I try not to do that, but I think a lot of people grasped it was personal. The people that occasionally you would see the odd person that didn't have the earplugs in, and I challenged them, and rather than put back with a response which was potentially negative, it was, oh, Mike, I'm sorry. You know, people are natural and they do forget now and again, okay, and that's okay. But accept it, have a different approach, and that's how you build a culture. That's how you build a safe culture. By talking to the people and explaining it to them in a way they understand, not by telling them to do it. It's explaining it to them. Get them involved. So, putting together, I'll start again. So yeah, I was absolutely delighted to be able to do that. Perfect. Okay. Everyone that goes offshore wants to come back the same way that they go there. It's obvious. We all want that. So you don't need to tell us that. We know that. We don't need to tell us every time that we go offshore. We don't need to tell us every start of our shift. We know this already, and being told this doesn't make much of a difference in the grander scheme of things. We know this. This is what we want as well. There's nothing personal about it, just we want you to come back the way you went out there. We know this. So, whilst getting told statistics about accident and incidents are important, to people that don't understand numbers, it's very hard to relate to. Whilst getting legislations of policies and procedures are also extremely important to follow and understand, people that are dyslexic do not understand that. They find it hard to read. It doesn't mean that they don't want to follow it. It's because they can't physically understand it. It's not their fault. We need to find different ways to communicate. Putting together health and safety guidelines, rules and regulations, policies and procedures, and sticking to stringent legislation set out by governing bodies must take countless of hours of time and a lot of extremely hard work, and it must frustrate the onshore teams when accident incidents happen at work, and you must wonder, why is this happening? If you guys have spent so many hours, countless hours and efforts putting all these procedures together, you must ask, why? What are we doing? Why are they not following it? Offshore workers don't see all that hard work. Therefore, we don't really understand at all, at least a full depth of appreciation, the work that gets done, that has gone on behind the scenes to help benefit us and keep us essentially safer offshore. We only see the end product whilst on the rig, and we have to adhere to it regardless of whether we agree it's safer or not. We have to adhere to it. I was fortunate enough to attend a safety reps workshop onshore at Ardo House back in February this year, along with 26 other safety reps from various different installations of the North Sea. And on one of the main topics that was raised was the management in change. And it was discussed and agreed that if the onshore teams could communicate with the offshore teams and involve us with the upcoming change, it would give us an awareness that a change is going to be happening. It would give us a foundation of understanding to what the onshore team are wanting on to happen at the very early stages. It would give us, as the offshore team, a chance to discuss the potential changes with our constituency meetings with the safety reps if the changes were actually beneficial and practical for us offshore, and if not, then the information from the meeting would get fed back to an onshore team from a safety rep, and some untouched knowledge that may be extremely useful for you guys onshore to understand. Certain changes may cause problems for us. The next time there is a board meeting or a conference call to discuss new safety changes for offshore workers, just ask yourself, I wonder what their view are and if they can help make changes better. I'm sure people are more likely to follow something that they're developing and they understand than just being told to do something. Make it relatable and make it personal. I thank you all for listening, and I wish you all a safe day. Thank you.